Hi guys, so today I'm going to be teaching you my favourite look to wear on myself, and my clients absolutely love this. It's probably my most popular look that I do on clients. So my brows definitely need doing, so I'm picking up a few strays with this, but we can always cover that with concealer later. My top tip for brows is use concealer to really shape the brows, so don't worry too much if they don't look perfect. I like to use a fine brow pencil afterwards to fill in any gaps, because mine need doing, they look quite gappy, so I'm going to use the HG Brows Brow Tech for this. So you can get similar pencils to this from NYX as well, but these are my favourite. This is in the shade Balm. And what I'm doing here is I'm basically drawing underneath, because that seems to be where my sparse areas are on this side of the brow. But I'm following the direction of the hairs, so underneath I'm kind of going upwards, slightly diagonally, and then at the top I'm going in a more downward motion. If you want a really fluffy brow, you can do an upwards motion all the way, but I prefer to follow the direction of the natural brow hairs. I've had my brows HG sculpted, even though it was quite a while ago. They do still brush up quite easily, but if you find yours are quite hard to brush up, there's quite a few great products out there, like brow soap and stuff. I'm still yet to try the, I can't remember what they're called, but they're like honey or something brows. So my brows are all filled in now. I'm now just going to use some concealer to clean up the edges. So I am using the shade Light Neutral from the Tarte Shape Tape. So this is definitely by far my favourite concealer. The reason being it is such full coverage and it definitely doesn't crease very much. The only problem I have is that the UK don't actually retail it. However, I just buy it online, and I buy like quite a few at a time, and I always do it when they've got some sort of shape tape sale. So I'm only using this concealer up to the crease of the eye, because under there I'm going to use an eye primer. I'm also kind of blending it into my nose here, so that when I do the rest of my makeup it just blends in seamlessly and I'm not struggling to blend the brows in with the rest of the face. So now that concealer is on and I've carved out my brow, I'm going to go in with the Plouise base in shade number 2. So I'm going to use the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes palette. So Makeup by Mario literally launched this brand last year, and I have to say they're really affordable and they're really good products. So this is the Master Mattes palette. As you can see, I use it a lot. So I'm going to show you my most popular look. And this starts with a bit of a smoke. So I'm actually going to go in with the darkest colour first, which again might seem quite backwards, but it's so important to know loads of different ways of doing things. If you're doing a really soft look, it can be good to build up from the lightest colour and then adding to the darkest. But if you're going to really get a smoky eye look or a bold colour, I would always recommend kind of patting on the darkest colour or the main colour and then blending it out with lighter ones. So you're almost imagining a sideways V shape or C shape here. So it's going along the lash line. So I have done this eye so you can see how much more blended it is in the other eye. So basically I've done that dark colour by patting it on. I'm now going in with this lighter brown, kind of warm brown colour. And I'm doing really small circular motions between that dark colour and the skin. So this eye look pretty much works on all eye shapes, because I'm not really enhancing that crease all the way around like I do normally. So this is something I picked up from Gore George. He taught it in one of his online classes. I definitely recommend following him if you don't already. He's a really great teacher and he has taught me a lot about makeup since I have been learning from him. So I've kind of taken it a little bit further around the crease this time with this colour, but I'm dispersing it a bit more. So I find you always want to leave a bit of a gap between the brow and the dark colour on this part of the eye, but the front here I do feel like you can come up a little bit higher towards the brow bone, where we're going to do the nose contour later. I'm not going to do a massive amount with this darker colour because I do want it to blend a bit better, so I'll use a lighter colour in a minute. But we are going to kind of join the eye makeup to the nose contour later, which will create a really beautiful seamless look, which makes it look a lot more expensive. This is something all the Kardashians and everyone does. So you can see it's blended, but it's still not 100% blended, so I'm now going to go in with a slightly lighter colour from the palette. You can use a bronzer for this as well. so I'm using this colour here. And again, I'm doing small circular motions, and this time I'm going a little bit higher, so between that lighter brown colour and the rest of the skin that's visible. And your touch needs to be really light doing this, so that you get the most perfect blend. You're almost just tickling the skin. And then I'm going to use this through that front part here to enhance the eyeshadow. So brushes wise, so far I have used the Plouise Acid Rain collection yellow brush to do the carving of my brows and applying the primer. And then I've just been using a few of the Morphe M514 brushes. These are a really great dupe for the MAC 221. So save yourself some money and just get loads of these so that you can kind of have a range of these in your kit, so you don't have to clean them between each colour. I used to literally only have one MAC 221 because it's so expensive. It's just impractical. Whenever I'm using shimmers, I really love to use pigments rather than just pressed shadows. I'm going to use the NYX Glitter Primer. So this product is really good to put underneath glitters or shimmers on your eyes. The Doll Beauty Pigment Popper is meant to be really good as well. I need to try that one. So I've just patted on some of the most wanted pigment on top of that NYX Glitter Glue. And I'm now placing a little bit of the famous pigment, both from Peaches and Cream. So I've switched palettes and I'm now using the Mario Master Metallics. I'm going to use this copper shade here, and I'm also going to use this one here to do my inner corner. So as you can see here, I'm building up like a gradient. I'm also using this pressed shimmer to blend the pigment so that you don't have that real cut crease look, because that's not what I'm going for with this. So I'm going to pat the NYX Glitter Primer on the other eye. I'm not using much product here, so please do not go crazy. And you basically want to have less product on the brush when you go further out towards the edge of the eye, so that you create a really good blend. And the same with above here, you don't want it to be really thick and like a line, because it will be harder to blend later. So for hygiene, when you're doing pigments, I would use a small spatula and a little palette. You can get them from Sally's. And then I would spatula some of the pigment onto the palette and then pick it up from the palette, so that you're only double dipping on your palette and not into the pigment, and you're not contaminating it. Hygiene is so important, and clients really will pick up on it, especially since COVID. People are a little bit more wary about hygiene, so I would be very careful to be as hygienic as you possibly can as a makeup artist these days. So I'm using quite a light pressure and just kind of blending out the edges with that kind of coppery shade. And then I'm going to use this light gold colour on my inner corner. We'll probably go over this later once the base is done, because it'll probably come off a bit, but it's good to get an idea. So now I just want to blend the darker shadow a little bit more onto my lash line and blend it into the shimmer so that it's really seamless. So for this I'm using the dark colour again, packing it on and just going a little bit along the lash line. You can also use a smaller brush for this, like a pencil brush. And then I'm going to go in with that medium shade to make sure that it's all perfectly blended here. But to apply that shimmer, because I was doing a blended out shimmer, I used the Morphe M152. This brush is a really nice one for this application. So as you can see on this side, I've done a bit of liner. So I've done waterline liner and I've also done top liner. I actually used two. You don't have to use two. I'm just quite enjoying a kind of soft blended out liner, but I still like the depth of the black. So I've done a brown and then a black on top, so that it's more blended out. You can also use like a black or a dark brown eyeshadow to kind of do a blended look and then put the eyeliner on. That will give you that blended look as well. So first we'll go in with the Inglot. Don't know what shade this is called, but it's the brown one. And I'm applying this along the lash line. So my top tip for liner is, don't feel like you need to do it in like a swooping motion. I prefer to do more of a printing motion, as you can see. So the brush I'm using is another Morphe M158. Morphe is definitely the best brand for like reasonably priced brushes. I think I got this in a James Charles kit. I'm applying this brown liner in like a wing shape, but I'm trying to blend it out at the same time. And then I'm going to go in with this Morphe M508, which I like to use as like a blending brush for liner, and just go back and forth to blend that liner out so you can see it almost blends into the eyeshadow. I like this, but I do feel like I need a bit more darkness, so I'm going to put a bit of black liner on top. And then I'm really enjoying doing a feline liner at the moment. I'm going to be honest with you, it's not easy to do, and it's definitely not easy to do on clients, but if you can practice it on yourself, definitely do, because it can look really gorgeous on some people's eyes. And again, I'm going to go back in with the Morphe M508 brush to blend it. And then I really enjoy using a colour on the waterline rather than a black, because my eyes are quite small. I find black makes them look smaller. So for black liner, I'd only do it on a client who says they already wear black liner, or they want a really smoky look and they've got quite large eyes. People with smaller eyes like myself cannot handle a really dark liner on the waterline. So I use this NYX Golden Bronze liner, which is a really gorgeous copper colour, and it really brings out my blue eyes. I use this on majority of clients. Occasionally I use a brown one from Urban Decay. So I've applied a little bit more of that primer that we used earlier, the Plouise one, very small amount. I'm just putting it underneath the eye very, very slightly, and I'm going in with that same dark colour we used first. So at this point I would apply mascara. I've already got mascara on, so I'm not going to bother adding any more layers. My favourite one to use on clients is the Maybelline Sensational Lash, because they do a waterproof one and it just stays on really well, and I know that they're not going to have it moving if they cry. The Roller Lash is a really good one if you want a non-waterproof mascara from Benefit Cosmetics. So I'm going to do some lashes now. So I'm going to use the Doll Beauty Esmerelda lashes. So my favourite lashes to use on clients are the Doll Beauty ones. So with these lashes, they sometimes have a bit of glue along the lash line, so I like to sometimes peel that off, but being careful not to break the lashes. I always like to trim them a little bit, especially with my eyes, because they aren't massive. I always take off the like inner corner and outer corner, because there's always like a little bit that kind of pokes, and that's going to poke people in the eye. I like to put lashes on my clients with their eyes open but looking down, because I find this is the easiest way to get the lashes on without gluing their eyes together, and the eye shape changes when it closes. It kind of scrunches up, so if you do it with their eyes looking down, it keeps the eye kind of a bit more stretched out so that you don't have those crinkles when it closes. Something that's really key to being able to apply lashes is a good lash glue. I really don't like the Eyelure one. I think they've got a new one now which is meant to be better, but I don't like their standard Eyelure glue. I just don't find it sticky enough. And if you haven't got the right glue, anyone's going to struggle, no matter how good you are. Even I would struggle using that glue. So I like to use the Tatti Lashes glue. And I would also really recommend, if any of you guys get lash extensions and you want to grow your lashes this lockdown, use the UK Lash Serum. It's absolutely amazing. It really makes your lashes grow really quickly. If you check out the links on my Instagram, I've got a link straight to the product, so just have a look on there. Okay, so I'm going to use a really matte foundation I've recently discovered and absolutely love. It is so matte though that I want to use a hydrating primer underneath, which is the Jart Tilbury Flawless Filter. This stuff is gorgeous. It gives a lovely glow to the skin, and if someone wants a dewy look, I definitely recommend it. If you're using a really drying foundation, I would recommend using it on this area of the face, so that when you do your cream contour, it slows down the drying time of that product. So the foundation I'm using is the Nars Soft Matte Foundation. So as you can see, I'm using a colour a lot darker than my face, because I'm trying to match it to my fake tan on my neck. So this is the shade Stromboli. It's a very yellowy undertone, so warm undertone, but that matches my tan very well. So you can see straight away this is drying down really matte. This foundation is a really good alternative to the Double Wear from Estee Lauder. I love that foundation because it lasts really well, but it's so drying and it's not very good for your skin. It used to break me out like crazy, but it does last. But this one does the same job, but is much better for your skin. So if you have oily skin, definitely go for a more mattifying and an oil-free foundation. This is definitely my favourite for super oily skin. If your skin's kind of combination, it's not too oily, the Nars Long Wear Radiant is gorgeous. And then if you have really dry skin, the Nars Sheer Glow is great. I definitely feel like the best brand for makeup artists kit is Nars, because their foundations are just the best. By far, I love them. They look so much nicer on your skin. They don't feel heavy. They are dermatologist recommended, so you know your clients aren't going to have breakouts after using it. So this foundation is a really full coverage, but I always like to do a patting motion for a glam look. If I had someone who wanted a really natural look and a lighter coverage, I probably wouldn't use this foundation, and if I did, I'd do it more of a swiping motion. How do you do a natural looking nose contour? So I am going to show you. So I hate it when nose contour is too strong and looks really obvious. So always make sure mine's really soft. So I'd say using both cream and powder will give you a natural look. I wouldn't use a powder on its own. I definitely feel like a cream will do a lot more than a powder, and it'll be a lot easier to blend out and look natural than with a powder nose contour. So here I am using the Mehron cream foundation in medium dark 2, I believe. So this is from a contour palette that my friend has. I just really liked this shade more than the other one, so I just got this one. It's only £11, so it's a lot cheaper than the £80 contour palette that she has. But this works for most skin tones that are kind of light to medium. It is, as you can see, very subtle, but for that subtle nose contour that you want, it's perfect. You don't even need to blend it, but I'm going to blend it ever so slightly with the foundation brush, just so it is really natural. You can use a deeper contour if you want. Again, you just might want to go in with the foundation brush a bit more to blend it out, so you can see how natural that looks. I would probably still go over this with a little bit of powder, but I do think cream is a lot easier to do a more natural nose contour with. Here I am using the Peaches and Cream Pixie 18 brush. And I like to blend the contour as I go rather than like drawing the lines and trying to blend it. It's much easier to do it this way. So I'm doing under the jaw, kind of going straight up here. So almost going to be doing a 3 shape, so we'll be doing around the forehead, because when you catch the sun, that's where you naturally catch the sun, is around the forehead. I'm doing kind of patting and a little bit of circular to make sure it's blended. So the reason I do cream and powder is contour is for adding shadows and bronzer is for adding warmth. So the contour is going to give you that shape that you want on your face, and the bronzer is just going to blend that into the base a bit more and give you that warmth as if you've got a sun-kissed glow. So if someone's a bit paler, I would definitely opt for a more lighter ashy contour colour. The medium dark 2 is perfect for lighter skin tones. So the contour product I used was a Revolution stick in shade F13. I would probably normally go with F14 for my skin tone, but I can't find it. I'm just going back in with my foundation brushes to blend the edges of all that contour. I did apply a little bit more of that contour that I use on the cheeks underneath my nose as well to really lift the nose. My camera just died whilst doing the other side, so I'm going to do this side. As I said, I like this because it doesn't crease and it's full coverage. It's very matte though, so if you had a more mature client, I would probably use a very small amount of this just on the dark circle, or I would use a more hydrating concealer. So I've just kind of placed it down the sides of the nose where the nose contour kind of edge was. So you're imagining, you're almost pinching that nose contour a bit more. I'm just blending it with a sponge. And I'm taking it all underneath the eye. But the main focal product is here and by that nose and underneath the eye. I'm just blending the rest in. And I'm going to use a very small amount of the light one, so a slightly lighter concealer, just to highlight that under eye bag a little more. Then I used the excess of the light neutral on the chin, down the nose, on the forehead a little bit. It's just easier to blend that way. You can, if you want to really enhance the contour, go a little bit underneath here, but I'd like to do that sparingly. So just before I put my powder on, I'm going to use a little bit of the Jart Tilbury Flawless Filter. Because this foundation is so matte, I want to give a little bit more glow to the cheeks. So I'm just applying with my finger with a very small amount of product. I'm kind of blending it in on my hand so that it's easier to blend on the skin. I'm just tapping it on the cheekbone, and this just means you don't have to use as much product when you're highlighting later. And I'm just going to put some on my Cupid's bow, and you can also put a little bit on your chin, but minimal because you don't want you've had a KFC. So for powder, I like to set everyone's face, even if you've got dry skin or you're mature. I always put some sort of powder on. I usually use a translucent. My favourite is a Laura Mercier because it's really finely milled. But this will go on pretty much everyone. So now that that's set, I can do a bit of baking. I don't tend to do much baking on my clients unless they specifically request it, or they've got really dry skin and beautiful skin that can take a bit of baking. If your client's dry, I wouldn't recommend it. And if someone's very wrinkly, I definitely wouldn't recommend it. So I just focus it down the sides of my nose, just using my sponge, and then sometimes do it here, or even underneath the cheekbone a little bit. Whilst that's setting, I'm actually going to do some bronzer. Be very careful when you're doing bronzer when you have a bake on, because you can't really see what the bronzer looks like too much. But I'm just going over those areas that we contoured, just blending those edges in a bit more and warming it up. So I'm using the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Bronzer in shade 2. Okay, so now that bake's been on for a little while, I'm just going to dust it off before I put my blusher on and highlighter. I always like to put translucent powder on before baking because it stops it kind of grabbing and going cakey looking, because it kind of sets the base first. So for blusher, I'm going to use the Pretty Fly Doll Beauty Dollar Day blusher. This is a new one for me, but I absolutely love it. It really reminds me of the Nars Orgasm blush, but obviously it's a lot cheaper and it's definitely more pigmented, so you do have to use less product. But it has a slight glow to it, so you don't even need highlighter on your cheeks if you're using this. I like to put my blusher on the apples of my cheeks and then up my cheekbone so it blends in. So I'm just putting a bit of highlighter on my nose. So I only like to highlight my nose on the bridge and the tip. And I like to blend it in sometimes with my finger. And then do the Cupid's bow. So this is the Pretty Little Glow from Doll Beauty again. So my top tip for reducing oil power cut there, that's lovely. So my top tip for reducing oil in the T-zone area is make sure that you prime the skin with an oil-free moisturiser. You make sure the skin is still hydrated, so using a hydrating toner and a cleanser. So for lips, I'm going to do an ombre lip, which is my favourite to do. So I'm using the Diva Forever lip liner from Doll Beauty. And I'm very slightly overlining my lips. So when overlining, you want to make sure you're not going too high, that you can tell that it's overlined. So that's as far as I tend to go on myself. And as you can see, I've coloured in the outside edge, that's so that when I do the ombre it works a bit better. I really like this one and the Boy Bye one, they're both lovely. So creamy, really easy to apply and really easy to sharpen. So you can see it's really quite dark, and I like to go with a very light lipstick to blend it in. So the lipstick I'm using is the Doll Beauty Golden Girl. So to do an ombre lip on my clients, I like to use a brush to blend it in. And I like to blend it all the way to the edge so that you don't get too much of a kind of harsh difference. You want it to be really blended. I'm then going to use some of the Doll Beauty sponsored lip gloss, which is lovely peachy colour, similar to the lipstick. I'm now going to do it underneath the eye. My favourite brush to do this is the Kryolan 3712 Art Brush. So I'm using the colours we used on the top of the eye underneath the eye, so the dark brown and then that warmer brown. Blending the eyeshadow down. I like to blend my eyeshadow quite low, as you can see. I find it opens up the eyes. I'm then going to use the brush we used for that medium warm colour And I'm going to blend the eyes into the base, very slightly kind of winging the eyeshadow out into the temples. And then I'm going to use that lighter colour as well. You can also do this with bronzer, you just might have to go with the eyeshadow slightly. It doesn't take away any deepness on the eye. So you can see how that just brings the look together. And again, I'm going in with that colour we used last, or a bronzer, ideally a more ashy bronzer, to go down this part of the nose. I'm also going to use a light contour colour. This is the Anastasia light medium contour kit with the middle bottom shade. It's a very ashy colour. There's a brand called Tyler that does a blush contour kit, which is a lot cheaper and exactly the same colour, so I might get that next time I run out. And I'm using it's called Colour, but if you can see the brush shape, slightly slanted, quite fluffy. I do want to try the By Georgina nose contour brush, because that's going to be really good. If you have any more questions, please just send me a message on Instagram. It's Makeup by ZK. I hope you really enjoyed watching this, and if you recreate it, please make sure you tag me. I hope you enjoyed watching today. Please make sure you subscribe.